school, learn, finish. In future, I want to be a teacher. My name is Boniface Wafula. In which class are you? I'm in class 5. Time you learn, finish. Work which you want. Work? Which one? He wants to be a motorcycle rider. Any other work, if you miss motorcycle, another one, which one? Which one? Yes. I want to become a teacher.
At least 1 million people in Kenya are deaf.
6.3% of the Kenyan population has one form or the other of hearing impairment. That ranges from mild, moderate, severe to profound. So that would make, on average, the total number of people that could be severely to profoundly hearing impaired, the ones that are called the deaf as opposed to hard of hearing, to be in the range of 1 million.
The deaf are people with needs and rights to education, information, healthcare, employment, and a sense of belonging. Sadly, their hearing disability creates a major communication barrier that disengages them from the society. They also become vulnerable to discrimination and exclusion.
There is always an attitude within the society. Many people do not know how to communicate with the deaf, how to interact with the deaf. When you meet a deaf person, there is that attitude. People thinking you cannot do anything together, socialize together, and do many other things. Many times the deaf person can see that attitude towards them from the hearing people.
In a developing country like Kenya that is still grappling with unemployment and poverty, the deaf are twice as much likely to experience poor economic outcomes. Thomas Inyama knows too well of the struggle of being a deaf person.
I joined Form 1 in Nyangoma Secondary in 1977, where we learned how to do masonry, carpentry, electrical work, and tailoring. Then I passed my exams, got my certificate and left. Then I just stayed in the village.
Opportunities for advancements for deaf individuals like Inyama are in most cases very limited.
I've tried to look for employment, but I have never managed to find any. I cannot access information. I walk, and when I look around, there's nobody to talk to. I cannot hear anything.
Because of lack of awareness, a lot of deaf people are always left out. And also, there is that assumption that the deaf people cannot be productive in the society because they are disabled, they should not be fed and given whatever they want.
In Kibra slums, we meet Videlis Njoki, who, like many other deaf people, her hearing disability puts her at a great disadvantage in society.
I have lived in Kibera from 1996 with my parents. In 1998, I was walking with my father in town when the US Embassy was bombed and the building collapsed. My father, he got injured on his hands and my ears got damaged as a result of the loud bang. I was born hearing.
Like many other deaf people, one of the main challenges that Njoki faces is exclusion. This has made it very difficult for her to find employment or engage in any meaningful income-generating activity.
I've wanted to start a business, but there are no funds. Sometimes, people who are capable cannot support a deaf person because they think they are proud and they cannot work and they think the deaf has a stupid mind.
There are a lot of factors that are responsible for low economic participation in the deaf community. But the main one is discrimination and oppression. This is the key barrier that inhibits deaf people from participating in economic activities in this country.
Although the Persons with Disability Act provides that 5% of all employment opportunities in both the public and private sector should be reserved for persons with disability, the deaf barely get their share of opportunities and are often excluded in many of the positions provided to other persons with disability.
If county governments want to employ persons with disability in order to achieve the 5% provision, something that a person with physical disability is easy to communicate with, or a person with albinism can walk and communicate easily. People fear what will happen to the deaf. How will we communicate to a deaf person? The deaf use their hands to communicate, which brings many challenges. The employer shies away because of the communication barrier. This results to many deaf people missing out on the 5% provision.
Some deaf individuals manage to fare well and become self-sustainable. However, this does not come easily. In Nakuru County, we meet Georgina Auma, a high school teacher who has beat all odds to be where she is today.
Personally, growing up, I have encountered many challenges, specifically those related to communication barriers. I remember one time at the university, sometimes I would miss cuts, exams, because I wouldn't know how the timetable will be. Sometimes my friends will forget I am deaf and they did not inform me in good time about the exams. Also, participation in social events was a problem. For example, the first year night, people were dancing, socializing with new boys, and I was just there. It was very boring.
As a minority group living in a world dominated by hearing people, how then can deaf in Kenya find their place in society? How can the deaf have their voices heard?
The government needs to increase the inclusion of deaf people so the deaf know how to solve their own problems themselves. Hearing people cannot solve challenges for the deaf.
The Constitution of Kenya identifies public participation or citizen engagement as national value and a means through which Kenyans can have their voices heard in issues that affect their lives. Under Article 174, all Kenyan citizens have a right to be included and involved in development and governance matters affecting them.
Public participation is key in the life of citizens. This is a forum where citizens express their opinions, their feelings and frustrations, and what they want to see the county governments or the national government do for them regarding things that affect their lives.
sababu nasikia kwa runinga kwamba makadirio tukisema ni 11 billion, labda mnasema kwamba mnagawanya.
In line with Article 196 of the Constitution of Kenya, county governments provide forums for public participation. Many of these forums enable ordinary citizens to engage in the budget-making process, policy formulation, and to have their voices heard in issues that affect their lives.
Mainstreaming participation of persons with disability, and especially the deaf, into public hearings and participation and things like that is something that is being done now.
If persons with disabilities are engaged and involved from the word go, like say for example in budget making process, I believe that they will be able to forward their issues, and I know that their issues will be noted.
Hilo ni jambo ambalo napongeza kuwepo kwa wananchi wengi ambao waliko hapa.
In spite of the constitutional promise of public participation as a means through which all citizens can get involved in governance and the furtherance of their development, the deaf are often left out.
Unfortunately, for deaf people, opportunities for participation are very limited. Yes, research may say that deaf people have opportunities to participate, but they don't participate. But there are very many factors which contribute to that. For example, how information is spread to reach them about public participation. If we announce on television or radio that tomorrow or the next 2 weeks or months we'll have public participation, how do you expect a deaf person to get that information without an interpreter in the television? The deaf person has missed that announcement.
The lack of access to information has been one of the main reasons why the deaf in Kenya are left out in important nation-building activities. In 2013, prior to the presidential debate, the deaf organized a peaceful demonstration to protest against the failure of the government and the media to convey information in a manner that is accessible to them.
We are aware that next week we shall be having presidential debate, and the deaf community, the people whom we are seeing there, they cannot access that information in that debate.
So we need to know what is your ministry doing to make sure that information is accessible to the deaf people. We don't get communication.
Although there are clear regulations that provide guidelines on the measures that should be put in place in order to accommodate persons with disability in order to ensure their meaningful participation, many county governments have failed to ensure that public participation forums are inclusive and can accommodate the needs of persons living with disability.
15 minutes, around Murudisha report.
In a budget proposal forum in Bungoma County, there was no sign language interpreter involved to convey information to the deaf. There seems to be no involvement or engagement of the deaf in the forum.
2 years down the line, since the inception of Bungoma County government, little has been done. But also, we also need to agree that indeed, for the last 52 or so years from the inception of the national government, little also has been done in terms of the inclusion of our colleagues who are deaf at the national level.
Similar to Bungoma County, a budget forum in Nakuru County also had no interpreters. Among the people in the crowd were several deaf people who, by the look of their faces, could not understand what was being said. In an act of bravery, Rispa Bosibore, one of the deaf individuals in the forum, stood up and signaled the speaker that she couldn't understand what was being said.
Kama kuna mtu hapa anaweza tusaidia kutafsiri kwa niaba yake, kwa sababu ako na haki kabisa kusikia vile tunasema, si ni kweli? Kwa hivyo
Following Rispa's start to demand for her rights to access information, a volunteer interpreter emerged from the crowd.
kwa sababu hapo na haki na tunakushukuru, na kwa hivyo na kuomba ngoja kwanza, na kwa niaba ya kamati tunakuomba umwambie tumemwomba msamaha.
For the rest of the forum, the deaf in the crowd were able to get information on the budget plans of their county government. However, only time will tell if this trend will be maintained.
Let me say it's a progressive process, yeah? We keep on talking about it today, then something little happens. Because when I was sworn in 2013, I talked about it, and I remember there was one forum we had an interpreter. Then it died. When I asked the interpreter, how comes nowadays you don't come to interpret for our deaf brothers and sisters? She told me, because I'm not being paid.
We must consider many things when we think of public participation for deaf persons or for persons with disability. Accessibility is a must. This is a constitutional requirement. The Constitution is very clear and candid about the county government and the national government. They must take consideration and have reasonable accommodation. They must have interpreters. When we do our announcements of public forums, we must find ways on how well this information can reach the deaf people, because they are important citizens as well. They can contribute towards the national building of the country. If their voice is missed, then the country will not move forward.
The inclusion and involvement of the deaf community in governance and development activities is key in ensuring that the future generations will be able to access information, quality education, employment opportunities, and other essential services that will ensure that they live meaningful and productive lives.
This heart of mine could be better, but I guess that it's doing just fine. Could this be a sign that I was meant for more than what I perceive on my mind? Somebody once told me it's a cold world that we're living in. It's been like that from the beginning, but I just can't get myself to see that this is how we should be. And every night I go to bed with a million questions on my head, hoping that I will find some answers deep within. I can change the world. You can change the world. We can change the world. But when things are going wrong, we just get too comfortable. I guess that's why the world will always be cold. I can change the world. You can change the world. We can change the world. But when things are going wrong, we just get too comfortable. I guess that's why the world will always be cold. I can change the world. You can change the world. We can change the world. But when things are going wrong, we just get too comfortable. I guess that's why the world will always be cold. I can change the world.